This week, I'm really excited to welcome Chrsity Pennison. She is the founder and lead inspirer at Be Inspired Counseling and Consulting. She's got 3 locations throughout central Louisiana. And man, when you hear her story of how she got started and then the steps in which she's grown her company, I hope that you're going to walk away inspired. Go and listen to her episode and see if you don't get the nuggets that I got. I want to hear about Be Inspired. I mean, let's get right to it. I want to hear why you got into it, why you've developed it into such a large operation.
You know, I would say I'm the least likely to do a lot of things, right? And entrepreneurship was never in my sight or vision of creating something. That just wasn't something I'd ever thought about was possible for me. A little backstory for me, when I was 22, I got pregnant unexpectedly in college. So I became a solo parent, okay, and single income earner to raise a child. So in my mind, I come from first generation college students, okay, that maybe didn't really have a lot of stuff growing up, but they were able to get college degrees. And so I did have that privilege in that way. And so I just thought that I'd always really just want to work hard to serve people, because I ended up going into the mental health profession. I knew I wanted to help people. I just didn't know how. And actually, I was the least likely to become a counselor. Seriously, I had a not great experience when I was like a child. And I was like, oh, these counselor people are weird. You know, I just really had a perception of them that was not accurate. And so I was least likely to do that as well. But somehow I found myself in a profession, a helping profession, that I would have never imagined myself in, but the love of helping others kind of drew me there. And so it's funny because actually 6 years ago, I was in Lafayette, which is where we're filming right now. And I remember I had went home earlier the spring of 2019, and I was actually in between jobs. Came down here for a job that I worked for about 4 years that had some changes, let's say. You know how organizations go through changes. The previous owner of our company had sold to a larger company that was backed by some private equity. And there was just a lot of changes that happened in that time, from them putting to different leadership, the value shifting. And I really found myself as a leader of that organization, which they threw me in at like my late 20s and was like, here, go start this program and grow it. Yep. And I didn't know then that those would have been the building blocks to help me actually do something like Be Inspired later on. And again, that wasn't the goal. But anyways, those changes made things so uncomfortable for me that I was like, is this what I've worked so hard to help others for? That my life was starting to kind of fall by the wayside. So I know we're talking about living here. So my life was starting to get really overwhelming. I was starting to have my own burnout. And I was like, okay, as a mental health professional, I need to read the signs for myself that this might not be the best place for me. So I jumped out, did a contract job, and did that for a little bit. But then I was like, because I had the opportunity to start and grow something in the beginning, I kind of got antsy and was like, okay, is this really what it's going to be? And I started listening to a podcast, okay, in maybe 2017. And it really helped me change my mindset of what was possible for me. I remember one day going home in 2019, probably in the spring, and I told myself I'm from central Louisiana. And I said, once I got to Lafayette, I'm like, not really going to go back to central Louisiana. No offense to my favorite people over there. And I went home to visit some family, and I said, you know what? I really feel like there's a need for mental health services here. And I did a Google search, and I couldn't find.
So there's a gap in the market.
There was a gap in the market, and my specialty was in children and teens at the time. And I couldn't find a child and teen therapist to save my life. Or if I searched for websites, some of the websites had not been updated for a long time. Maybe they've been created like in the early 2000s, 90s, no updates.
Brochure sites.
Exactly. And so I said, I really feel like if I'm having trouble finding somebody here, then there might be an opportunity here. And I remember I could not sleep that night. I was staying at my mom's house visiting, And I woke up the next day and I wrote down this vision of this place called Be Inspired and what it would look like and what are the values that we'd hold. I'd actually, before them, and go into Opportunity Machine here. They have those like pop up. You could come on Tuesday nights classes and learn about business. But I thought I was going to do an online business. Okay.
Yeah, sure.
If I was going to do that, never happened. But I said, okay, let's do this Be Inspired thing. And I was naive enough to not know a lot of things.
Yeah, you did it because you didn't know how hard it was going to be.
I did not know. And listen, in 3 months, I sold my house here in Lafayette. I packed up my rescue animals and my daughter. My realtor back home, where I moved back to, thought I was legit crazy. She tells me this years later, right? She's like, Christy, I didn't know how you're going to do it. Like, I felt bad selling you that house because I'm like, how is this woman going to like pay her bills, you know? And, you know, with a hope and a prayer and a lot of hard work and persistency later, you know, we've grown to 6 years later, a 3-location office that really services a lot of people in our Central Louisiana community.
So you have, how many counselors are on board now?
I think right now it's between 14-ish, 14, 15, yeah.
And so you're doing you do teens and kids, you do adults, you do men.
Yeah. From kids all the way up to, we even this year started taking Medicare. So we even work with people that are a little bit older in life. And so we do the whole life range, and we have therapists with different specialties.
Correct.
That can really be able to really service a wide range of people. Yeah.
I feel kind of bad because I said there was a gap in the marketplace.
There was.
And it truly is there's a gap in service that you can provide, right? But it is a business decision, and you're investing money and time and energy in this company, and so it was a very good move.
I mean, in hindsight, it was. You know, I learned about the blue ocean thing, and where you go look for the blue oceans and say, okay. And in hindsight, I just knew that I wanted to serve, and I knew eventually I wanted it to be a group. But my business background was Opportunity Machine, maybe Tuesday night classes. And those were great, right? Yeah. But I'll never forget meeting with my first consultant when I moved up there. And he was like, Christy, do you know what a P&L is?
Yeah, exactly.
And I was like, a what? He's like,
is that a bank?
And literally he drew it off on a napkin for me. And he was like, okay, you have your revenue. This is your top line revenue. And he would like try to explain it to me. And I was still so cross-eyed. I'm telling you, I was like,
So let me ask you, you got a counseling degree?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. So originally you were into counseling, but you didn't know that that's where you would.
No, I mean, my path has been, I call it follow the journey, honestly. It's been my life. I had one role, actually my original role back when I had my undergraduate degree was as a child forensic interviewer. And that's some kind of deeper stuff. But I'd interview kids that had allegations of abuse and neglect. And so I worked with that for probably about 1.5 years, serving those kids. But I felt so bad because they'd have to leave my office and then have to figure out how to deal with life after this maybe not so great thing happened to them. And so that kind of pushed me into the therapy world. And then I went back and got my master's. My daughter was probably like 2 or 3 at the time, and finally got that. But then for the counseling track, then you still have to do 2 years after that to get fully licensed. So eventually I made my way to full licensure. And I think when I got full licensure, that's when they were like, hey, a former employer of mine was like, listen, we really are trying to open this program in Lafayette. Would you want to move down here? And I was like, what? Leave Dodge? And then but I was like,
oh, you're from Dodge?
No, I'm just joking. Like, leave Dodge. Like, no.
But I was thinking
I'm from Ball, Louisiana. Do you know where that is?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, absolutely.
So I was like, get out of Dodge. Okay. But I took the leap, and then, so I leaped slowly at different points in my life to like get to the point where I got more comfortable with taking risk, I think.
Sure.
Yeah.
So your locations are Alec, Pineville,
and Natchitoches.
Natchitoches. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. You went to Northwestern?
I actually did for my master's.
Oh, okay.
Believe it or not. So I would actually, it's interesting that when we opened that location, it was kind of like a full circle moment for me, because I can remember I was still working a full-time job at the Children's Advocacy Center. And I would drive up there on like maybe Tuesdays and Thursdays for their master's program. It was kind of hybrid in the very early days of like online learning, where they did a little bit online, but then they still made you come in person for some of it. And and Northwestern is where I got my master's.
Love it. Yeah. I love it. When you opened and you said, all right, hanging my shingle, opening my door, How long was it before you hired your first person? What role did that person, was it like an admin or something?
Yeah, actually it was an admin, and it was a while.
Yeah.
As you well know probably, and I'm sure as you've talked with some of the individuals with startups, it took a lot longer than I anticipated,
Yeah.
right? I opened the doors and I was like, wait, why isn't anybody calling? I'm ready to help people. I know that there's a need in the community. It took probably about maybe 18 months in.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, before I was able to hire my first support person. And it was an administrative person that was very part-time to help me answer the phones.
Yep.
And she was first. And then the second person right after her was a contract therapist. Because at that point, also in this time, COVID happened. So I was 7 months, maybe 6
Good
months
times,
in.
huh?
Yeah. 6 months into business, right? Barely, getting by and paying my bills. Those were kind of sketchy times then. And then COVID happened. And so that really did a whole number on everybody. I also think that in my space of helping people, that later on that year actually was something that helped us amplify and start adding more people to our team, because a lot of people were struggling, and rightfully
for sure.
so. Yeah,
For sure. Yeah.
So.
And so you started, it's pretty much the counselors, they're contract counselors, and they
Well, not
they're
anymore, but at the
marketing too?
time when we started, because, again, I was learning. I felt like I was getting my learning as I was trying to figure out how to do this business
You'll
thing.
always be learning.
Right, always be learning. So thankfully, one of the things I did early on was get in like a consulting group.
Very
And
good.
so I was really learning industry-specific stuff of how can we continue to get the message out there, what we're doing. And so, so they started off as contracts. But then as I listened to feedback as our team grew, I also looked at the area and knew what people were used to.
Yeah.
Contract employment's not really big in where I live in Central Louisiana. It's very different. Even in Lafayette, different, because there was more openness for contract, I even think, here than even that different part of the state. And so I started to just listen to the feedback of what the people that I had already brought on board, which we were a very small team at the time. And they were like, Christy, if you'll just pay some of my taxes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I was like, you know what? Okay. And so then I started exploring what that model shift would look like. And so eventually, before we got to the size we are now, we did a transition, which has ultimately been the best for our team, because we were able to then provide that security of things like, which we didn't start it all at once, but like health insurance, paid time off, all that fun stuff. And then eventually retirement match and stuff like that. So now it's actually completely W-2 with a lot of benefits that you'd have in a typical.
That's really fantastic.
Yeah.
That's good. Because I've worked with some counselors, and at a few admit that, I was in business, but I was in counseling. I wasn't in a business, you know what I mean? And they started to realize that, there's revenue, there's income, there's expenses, there's, marketing and all of the stuff, when really most people want to be counselors.
Well, and that's what helps us provide a unique fit for people that they don't want to have to figure all this other stuff out, right?
The billing and the setting the appointments.
If you're taking insurance, then credentialing yourself or finding somebody, or how to keep that client flow coming in, just like any business. It really is interesting because, I think like most therapists, we are the big hearts of the world, right?
That's right.
I would characterize us, because I can even think of my team, like literally the most compassionate, empathetic, really want to serve people. And, they have great skills in that, of listening, of reflecting, of helping you sort through life's problems. And, they really do some like life-changing work, 1,000%. But if they don't ever learn the business side of things, it's kind of like you're a technician and you start a business. That was me, right? I knew how to do the therapy. I knew a little bit about the program development, but not really from the business development side of things, right? Because somebody managed the finances in the business that I was a part of, and things like that. But yeah, you learn a lot along the journey, and you have to learn that it is a business. And so for you to continue to be able to help people, you have to learn those skills to be able for it to be a sustainable thing in your community that really makes an impact.
Yeah. No doubt about it. So I love that you get it, and you use the language that I use. There's technicians, managers, leaders. And in some ways, you're in each one of those roles.
Yeah.
But as the leader, lead inspirer, the chief inspirer?
Yeah, lead
is that
inspirer.
What
Somebody actually threw that name on me one time, and I'm like, well, we are be inspired. So lead inspirer kind of sounds right. Yeah.
I love it. So how did that come about?
We're actually shooting a promotional video because, again, you got to learn the marketing piece and how do we speak to people because therapy is a really hard thing for people to volunteer sometimes for.
Sure.
If you've never been to therapy and you're struggling and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm going to go tell my deepest secrets or my life problems to a stranger. That's a hard gap. And especially if you're raised in different belief systems, like we shouldn't tell our business to nobody. And, you should just pull yourself up by your bootstraps and keep going. We did a promotional video. And actually the guy who did the video that lived on our homepage, which we're about to redo it because it needs a facelift. But he said he had actually put on there Lead Inspire. So it just kind of stuck.
Yeah, I
was
love
like,
that.
okay.
I love that.
I guess
See,
I am the Lead Inspire.
Own it.
Yeah.
Yeah, keep it going.
Yeah.
So I also saw you are doing a good job of marketing, and you're doing what needs to be done to, make sure that your counselors are working and that you're serving as many people as you can. In the end, though, it's about serving your clients.
Yeah.
And so,
yeah, because you can get them in there, but if you're not serving them and helping them really, for us, create some of that change that they wanted to come in to do, then, that's not going to help you really grow, or really reach other people because you won't be like, I want to know those people. And I don't know, their front office person was not very nice. That's not what people say about us, but
So it's really kind of unique though. Let's say we had a auto parts store where there wasn't an auto parts store, and you can see that people start coming and they have a need, and you fill the gap. I'm sure you've been pretty well received in Natchitoches.
Yeah.
But it wasn't there before. They may have had a few little things, but it wasn't there like you're delivering it.
Right.
So has the community received you, and has it started you see a shift in people willing to understand that mental health is health?
It's really interesting because I think what I've learned, and also just from supporting other people that are doing this work throughout, the different parts of the United States, it's really interesting that every community is different. And every time that you even open up a different place in a different location, there's different dynamics to it, at least is what I'm learning. Okay, I haven't figured it all out. But speaking of Natchitoches, one of the things that I've learned is that it took a little bit longer for us to build trust there. Even though we had therapists that are from there, that live there, that work there, really building the trust and then also helping to break down some of that stigma around seeking help.
And that's kind of
where education. And so that actually location out of all of them has been a little bit slower to grow. Yes. And it was actually our second location to open up. It's getting there. I feel like we're now about to be 3 years in November, and I can start to slowly see how the tides are turning. But it's taken a little while, so. And I thought, we were talking about back to the, blue ocean thing, or like, here's the gap. I'm like, oh my gosh, there's such a need. I went to Northwestern. Our location's right across the street from the college. College students could actually walk over. College is a very stressful time. I know we were talking about, some of your kids in college, and, it's not always the easiest. You're learning how to adult. You're also going through life challenges. If you have any anxiety about being away from home or some of the pressure and stress that school can cause. But what we found is that it was a little bit harder to even build relationships with the university so that there could be that trust. So, every different thing that you do, different challenges and different things to figure out as you go along.
Yeah. And you got to learn and adjust and iterate just
always.
Continually.
Always.
It's just a process.
Sometimes I'm like, when it gets really calm and there's not been anything that's happened, I'm like, okay, I just start knocking on the wood and I say, I know it's going to come, but can we just be in this calm season for a second?
No, that lasts a minute. Do you see yourself going beyond the 3 locations, or?
We're in a unique place right now where we do the EOS model, and we kind of operate off of that. And so last year, when we kind of maybe 2 years ago, when we set like our 10-year vision, it was to have 8 locations and to expand to different parts throughout the state, not necessarily jump states, but throughout Louisiana. But once we got to location 3, our leadership team kind of sat down and was like, okay, this has been a lot more work than we anticipated it being, because every
Always.
time you duplicate yourself, it's not just an easy duplication, as we were just talking. Like,
Adds complexity.
every location's different. You have to redo some of your systems that are not holding as well anymore. So I think right now we're at a place where at the beginning of this year, when we did our year goal, we're like, maybe we'll revamp this a little bit.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that we might still grow to more locations, but I think for right now, our goal is to get each location to its fullest capacity of service.
Optimize each location. And then you can have that conversation.
That's right.
But I do love that you're doing, I love EOS.
Yeah.
I absolutely do.
I mean, listen, I was slow to adopt it at first, but that was probably one of the other best decisions we made. Well,
you might have started to get traction.
Yeah,
yeah. And then when you do, you'll see that the beauty is in the simplicity.
Mm-hmm.
And then you work beyond it. But you're at 3. You're working to optimize each location. And I understand that you cover a broad types of services, men, women, married couples, I would imagine, teens, college kids.
Yeah.
What are you missing, though? Is there anything out there that you're not doing?
Well, we have started looking at expansion in a different way, right? Whenever you're looking at your business, sometimes it can be by geographic location and location specific, but it could also be like services. What services are we offering? So this year we did actually realize there was a gap in continuing education for mental health professionals.
I saw Inspire ED.
Ed, that was something we launched this
Ed.
year. So now we actually are helping provide continuing education for other individuals throughout the state and our community, so other mental health professionals. And that's really been cool because it's given our team, those who want to, the ability to kind of diversify what they're doing, right? So a lot of times for our therapists, they are really tried and true, holding the space for people in the office, throughout the week. And that's their primary role, is to really service our clients and meet them where they are and help them to get where they want to be. But, we also notice that we have some very multi-talented people in our group.
For sure.
And so, one of the needs we saw in our community was for continuing education. And so that allowed some of our therapists to have really some very unique perspectives and expertise, like in areas that I'm not even trained in. And so we're like, how can we really highlight and allow them to share some of that knowledge they have with others? And so that's how kind of Inspire Ed came about. But I think we're always exploring, okay, we don't want to overcomplicate things. Like you said, sometimes the beauty is in simplification, but it is what other services could we might offer, or how can we even revamp some of our existing service models to be able to be a little bit more?
Maybe? Or?
Yeah, that is one area that we're really looking to maybe expand. It's interesting because in Central Louisiana, people still like to come in person.
Yeah. I hear you.
I would say probably like 95% of our clients still, and they'll drive in from, I'm talking about 30 minutes away, 45 minutes away.
Well, they're used to it, that they go to the store in a big town and they come back.
That's right. And so, but I do think that telehealth is something that is continuing to grow. And I think there is some opportunity and benefit from like not just the main big telehealth players. So I'm sure people have probably, pulled up their phones and seen advertisements before by some of the major ones that are throughout the United States that market with telehealth. But I think there is something to like having homegrown, I guess, so to speak, practice that offers that. So I think that is something we're looking at actually as maybe in a way our 4th location, even though we already offer. It is
100% your 4th location.
I mean, we offer telehealth services, but how can we be more intentional? And that's a whole different. How do we get in front of the people that really value telehealth? And that's a different strategy than what we've kind of been doing. So maybe stay tuned.
Yeah.
I mean, I love it. Yeah.
Back. Yeah. It's just, you got to serve where they are. Right.
Yeah.
And so what I love about what you're doing is that 2 people, you know how these quotes come around?
Yeah. Oh, I'm a quote girl.
But Douglas MacArthur and Sam Walton are both credited for beat 'em where they ain't. Mm-hmm. Right. And so like Sam Walton, he put stores where nobody else were putting stores. So he was beating everybody where they ain't. And in these towns and areas,
Yeah.
you're doing it. And with telehealth, you could be where others aren't.
Well, and telehealth also helps our providers, right? So our providers that are in those locations that may not have as much client traffic as the other ones, then it also allows them to see people virtually to fill that gap of maybe if there's not enough in person to really have that kind of diversification. So yeah, and it's coming. I mean, I had to do some forced research the other day for this program that I was in that was like, what are the opportunities in your industry? And me and ChatGPT sat down. Now, not that ChatGPT is the always correct and the authority, but it does scan the internet to try to find you some information. So, you know, telehealth especially is a rapid growing industry and is going to continue to grow is what they're forecasting. So, you know, I think the busier people get, you know, the more that they're going to, you know, struggle to sometimes leave their home or leave their work to be able to interface. And, you know, I mean, I personally, even though I don't do therapy anymore, prefer the in-person experience, just like what we're doing here, right? Like this is fun to me versus the virtual. But, you know, you meet people where they are, kind of like you said, with what you have. So
I didn't know that you weren't doing the counseling anymore. So you're more the administrative leader. You've taken that role.
Yes.
Well, and that's how you're going to grow.
That's exactly right. Well, September of last year was my last. I'd really backed myself out of seeing new clients for a while. I hadn't taken any new clients for maybe about a year and a half or two. But last September, you know, it was hard because I still had all I did was 4 sessions in a week on a Tuesday afternoon. But I said, you know what, I'm not really doing the best service to the clients that I'm serving or my team.
Or your team.
Yeah. And so I really need to be able to find ways to like kind of hand them off to somebody that I think would really work well with them. And honestly, most of them did transition to somebody else on our team. And so I get to, it still is good for me as a therapist because I can like, you know, how are they doing? Because you form very close relationships with some of these people that you serve for sometimes years, you know? And so, so I've stepped back in September, which has been, I'm glad that I made that choice.
Yeah. And they're probably, it's rewarding, but you're a servant and you're, you know, big-hearted.
That's right.
But somebody had to do it. And so I'm really proud of you for doing that because too many people can't take that leap of faith. And
well, you know, I had to do that. And one other thing I had to do right around the same time. Because then also, as soon as I stepped away, there was my team coming with me. They were coming at me with some things that I'm like, and I was probably a little burnt out because we had like expanded 2 locations within 2 years. Yeah. And we also purchased the buildings that we're in. So we did renovations and everything like that.
Very smart, by the way. Very smart.
Well, listen, I learned a lot. Okay. So, you know, a lot of trial and error, as you all know, right? So, but through that, it just took a lot of energy from our team. And so then we had to reevaluate, you know, where we're going. So the second thing that I did after I stepped away is, you know, I thought I had this leadership thing, you know, I thought I was a decent person and leader, you know, my natural therapy skills coming out as a leader. But I realized when I was faced with some challenges that I was like, okay, this is an area that I thought that I'd maybe was doing okay in that I really need some help. So I actually ended up getting a leadership kind of coach, consultant person that really kind of helped me reframe what my next role was going to be. And I think that's hard. I don't know if I know you talk to a bunch of people in business, but it's hard when your role changes.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And you learn to have to be in this other role that, you know, where in the beginning stage, y'all have more togetherness and you know all your team members and you know how everybody's doing. And then at some point you have to be like, okay,
for the good of the company, we have to go in this direction.
Right, and I have to trust these people to take care of these people.
That's right.
Because these is who I've appointed, and I got to take care of them. So it's been an interesting change.
Yeah. Good for you, though. I'm telling you, it's very, very hard. And you have to become the leader the company needs you to become.
Yeah.
And it sounds like
it's
you're
still
doing
in process. I'm trying.
Well, and it always will be. Mm-hmm. Here's good and bad news.
Are you telling me there's no arrival point?
No,
okay.
No. You're pursuing a destination that you may not ever get to, but keep pushing, and that's the beauty of it. You know, we talked about leading your team and growing your company and some of the ideas around growing your company. And I do want to thank you for sharing like how you got into this, and you had a daughter and that worked out beautifully, but how is growing this company and the way you're growing it affecting your life?
You know, it was really it's been interesting because it's different seasons, right?
Yeah.
So at the beginning, right, there was a lot of time. And actually during COVID, that actually worked out. Again, maybe not tons of resources, but a lot of time. And so there was a lot of opportunity to do a lot of creative things and kind of even be more present when not everybody was able to have that luxury during that transition in time. So it's been interesting of how it's affected my life. One thing, it's allowed me to meet incredible people. Not that I wasn't already meeting incredible people, especially when I lived here in Lafayette. There's good people here. But it allowed me to meet other business owners. It allowed me to expand my own mindset. I think my view of what's possible has changed drastically.
Yeah.
I mean, even the original idea of where this company was going to be was not here.
Yeah, correct.
But getting yourself in spaces like this where you're around people who have been there, done that, and then also are able to be around so many other people that are doing the same thing, I think that's been a real gift. And I do think it's given me a little bit of time. So like this weekend, I went and my daughter and my mom and one of her friends, we went to Austin. So we took half the week. I looked at my schedule last week and it was pretty last minute. And I was like, well, I really don't have anything on this day. I don't have anything this day. Oh, this is the reason why I've
got it.
Yeah. So, we were able to take a trip to Austin and on the way back, it's funny that you're talking about Walt Disney. I was looking at the Buc-ee's, because when you're going to Texas, you just got to stop at a Buc-ee's. And they're getting one here.
Yeah,
but
I know.
Reading the story of that, of how that all started and grew is pretty phenomenal to me.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Truly.
Yeah.
What's weird is, so I brought my daughter to school at Auburn, and they have a Buc-ee's right in Auburn.
You went to
So we started the day at Buc-ee's.
Okay.
And then they have that new one in Mississippi, Harrison County.
Yeah.
And
that
I was
one is
on the phone with, because it's new,
Yeah.
And I was on the phone with somebody. I said, hey, look, we're committing a sin right now. I'm passing a Buc-ee's and not stopping.
You made the right decision on that.
I did. Two in a day is a little bit much.
Well, and I stopped at that one recently coming back from the beach, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's not the same one. It was the other one that was maybe in Mississippi, Alabama.
No, Mississippi just opened, I think July 9th or something like that.
Whichever one it was so crazy. And it's so funny because who I was with, they were like, this will be my first and last trip to Buc-ee's. It was so there were so many people.
It's too much.
Yeah.
It's too much. So pass that up. Yeah, and we're getting one and one in Ruston.
I know.
So,
yeah.
This isn't a Buc-ee's episode, but
I know. But it talks about entrepreneurship, and the story is pretty fascinating. Drove a lot.
Yep.
Was tired of nasty restrooms and things like that, and said, okay, what can we do here?
Yep.
First one worked. And then it just expanded past then. How can we duplicate them and make them even larger? And, they really were able to meet a need and demand that, people didn't even know they needed.
Yeah, turn something that's mundane and,
the gas station.
Into something like Disney World,
Exactly.
It's nuts. It is crazy.
You can even get your Buc-ee's t-shirts.
So, what's the dream though for your counseling? Is it more about living a healthy, happy life?
It's interesting because I think we were talking before we pushed the record button. For me in this season, it really is trying to explore, where, because, your vision changes so much as you go along the journey. And so I don't know. I feel like I'm in a stage right now where I've tried to give myself permission for the next several months, maybe even to the end of the year, to kind of try to just be for a minute. Because, when you've been building things, it just takes a lot of energy and effort. And not that I still haven't been able to go really cool places that, I didn't really maybe weren't able to go as frequent, meet a lot of cool people and be able to afford opportunities that, like bringing my mom on vacation. That was something when I was penny pinching back in the day was not a reality, right? I would be lucky. I mean, I still went on vacation, and I'm not saying she couldn't tag along, but it'd be like, Mom, you want to pay for it? So it's really cool to be able to do those things and not really have to think about it in a lot of ways. But the future, I don't know. If you would have asked me a few years ago, it was kind of, I really enjoyed speaking. And I was like, maybe that when my daughter gets out of high school, then I'll kind of hit the road and do that a little bit more. But I think it's evolving. I'm kind of at a place where I'm trying to figure out what that looks like. Good. For the business and also for other things that, I get to do on the side for my passion projects is what I call. And I'm really big on right now, as I'm sure a lot of people are, is energy levels. I mean, this was born out of a place of burnout, honestly.
Yeah,
if I would have never been burnt out in that other job and took a moment to do a contract job where I was working maybe, not really necessarily full-time hours. So I had time to read books and,
And dream
go to
a little bit.
Opportunity Machine and dream up some things. So I really want to figure out where now would be the best use of not only my time, energy, and then also creatively, what are the things that maybe to have the energy to do, like maybe write a book like you write one. I know you already wrote one. You're going to write another one, right?
Yeah, I'm writing one right now.
Uh-huh. But
So-
you need energy and time for that, right?
You do. And I really do think we as entrepreneurs invest so much, not just money, but time and energy. And if you can't get a return on money, time, and energy, then you're just not doing it the way you can do it.
Yeah.
Right? And maybe we explore that. But speaking of that, what are some of the lessons you've learned? And because since COVID, you pushed it pretty hard.
Yeah.
So what are some of the lessons you've learned
we had
along
COVID.
the way?
We had flooded out of our office. I mean, just like anybody, the challenges.
Yeah.
What lessons have I learned? I think it's important. One of the things is, I do have a faith-based perspective. So I'm very big about yes, we need to have the vision. I definitely think goal setting is a must frequently. And, so that's why I like the EOS model where it really forces you to, okay, what's the next quarter's goals? And the next quarter, evaluating if those goals were met and what were the challenges to meet those goals. And just kind of the meeting structure that really helps you solve problems pretty quickly and hopefully have them solved once and not have to solve them again for a while. Yeah. But I think the things that I've learned is you just have to stay consistent, I think, and have a clear vision of where it is you want to go. And that vision changes and shifts. Yeah. Light bulb, we get a light bulb.
That's right.
Yeah. But you have to stay persistent because I don't know about you, but I know you've talked to so many people. And I think it's the moment that you want to give up is the moment that you really have to keep going because it's right on the other side. Right. I think that, and I think honestly, surround yourself with great people. I'm very fortunate. And I think I was thinking about this the other day as I was reflecting. We were having our leadership team meeting. And I've been very fortunate to have attracted some people that are just very similar in values, which we do have some values in our company that are kind of like our pillars that we communicate, we hire off of. We kind of, if we're addressing an issue, we're going back to those. But we've just had a really great people that, are willing to learn, that are willing to support the mission of the organization, that are really passionate about serving people. So I would say find your people, and also find your people as far as mentors, because
absolutely.
If there is one thing that I feel that really changed the trajectory for our whole organization, it was, there's never a time where I don't have probably 2 or 3 consultants, mentors, somebody helping me learn something at any given time and holding me accountable to take action on those somethings that I'm learning. Yeah. And that's another thing, implement. I see a lot of people that have a lot of ideas and then they, might sit on that idea for a minute and they don't implement. So it's implement fast and you're going to learn. Yeah. The faster you do it, the more you're going to be like, okay, that was a terrible idea. Or that was great. That was the best idea we had.
You learn quickly and you can, keep executing or shift gears.
So I know that's a lot of scattered things, but I would say definitely.
What's been your favorite thing then?
Oh my gosh, just seeing it come to life. I have the notebook. Too bad I didn't bring it today, but where I sketched out the whole thing. I mean, it's just an idea. Yeah. And so I think the entrepreneurial high, will you say, that I've learned, and again, I'm still a baby entrepreneur. We're only 6 years in this game. So get me in another 6 years or maybe 20 years down the road, I'll tell you how things are. Like we were talking about my mentor, Cherie, who's been in it for almost 30 years and has started to kind of make her exit. But I don't know. I think it's just the ability to pull up at any day. And although it's a big burden of responsibility, because you do have the responsibility, learning to share that responsibility, I think, is really important. But just realizing that we can create whatever we're kind of coming up with in our mind and just making sure, does it test, does it fit, and then try it. Yeah. If it doesn't work, I've really loved how you said that return on your energy and time and investment. Then you can always say, this isn't working the way we thought it is. We are evaluating one service offering right now in our business that we started to look at some data to say, how long are these people staying? And it's actually couples, by the way. Oh, yeah. And what is the challenges that we're finding in servicing them, where they might just be coming, I think a lot of times people do that reactively, it's 911. So now we're going to therapy. And somebody might already be out the door. And so we're trying to figure out, how can we do our messaging better? How can we be able to figure out the readiness for that service and restructure it in a way where hopefully people that we're getting in, they're really ready to kind of do some work, So I think you're always reevaluating what can we do better, and so.
Well, and here's the deal. Let me go back to the services you provide, right? If you are a counselor, do you really have the time, and that's all you were doing, focused on counseling, do you really have the time to look at the analytics and figure out, is what I'm doing, is it working for these people?
Yeah.
Are they getting the outcome they need, they deserve, they want?
No, you don't.
You don't. And so for you to take on the leadership role and some of the management pieces of it, if you wouldn't have done it, then people would not be served as well.
No.
Your team members would not be able to offer what they're
and just even finding the tools that can help you. So like we found out a lot of information from a recent tool that we got that was made specifically for therapy group practices that were a certain size to help evaluate a lot of different, it was like a living dashboard, like a KPI dashboard for therapy. And so we were able to look at a very high level view, things that's like, okay, what's maybe causing these people to maybe not be able to be committed to the point where we know statistically people should be in this much for them to really make some substantial change or some significant change in their life. So if these people are only coming this many times, the likelihood of them actually creating some change or lasting change for couples, relationships, then it's not going to be very high. So you're right. You have to be able to step out of it to look at it. And then you have to have other people to help you look at it too. Yeah. So it's not just you that's looking at it and then saying, okay, guys, this is what we're going to do. It's multiple people looking at it and saying, okay, what can we do together to figure out how to do this? Because I have a perspective. I haven't been doing therapy since, last year. So there's stuff that I'm starting to lose that I forget because I used to do it all the time. And so I need to lean on the people that are still doing some of that to have that real in-time knowledge and perspective to see things that I can't see when I'm so just looking at the data.
And you know what? Honestly, that's another light bulb for people who have stepped away from their role as technician or manager and gotten into leadership. You kind of have to keep your hands wet, right? Yeah. And you have to get back into it. But at least talking with your team who is in the day-to-day and their activity, it's just really important to keep doing that.
Yeah.
Be inspired. Who was your inspiration? And where you've gotten to this point, who has truly inspired you the most?
Oh my gosh, that's a great question. Well, let me talk about the podcast because that's what first comes to mind. And so the podcast that I was listening to, I don't know if you ever listened to this one, is School of Greatness by Lewis Howes.
Yeah,
okay.
Sure.
So that podcast was the one that I was listening to back in 2017 because an employee of mine said, Miss Christy, I think you'd really like this podcast. And I'm like, I don't even know what a podcast is. Okay. And so I remember I was like, okay, let me look at it. And so I started listening to that. And just because of the different individuals he brings onto the show, different perspectives, I think that really helped me expand my worldview of what was possible for me. Yeah. And so I also attribute, I don't know if there was like one person that I really was trying to emulate. So it was just that I wanted to create this thing. But there was a guy that was a mentor of mine that I met through the 705, which is a young professionals group here in Lafayette. He had come and spoke on like maybe communication skills. I don't know what it was. But we would sometimes go to lunch every now and then, and I would learn stuff from him. But one thing he said to me that in the moment didn't make a lot of sense, but at the time I would tell him my woes about, all this stuff that's going on at the company I was working for. And he's like, Christy, why are you working so hard to build somebody else's dream? And so, although I don't know if there's like one point of inspiration, I think that was a question that then later stuck with me.
You're correct.
That
and
kind of
keep
helped
going
push
back to it. You're right. You're right.
Yeah.
So you feel like you're building your dream?
Yeah, I definitely think so. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. And that's where I have to sometimes really remind myself when you get in the day-to-day, because I'm sure a lot of people that are listening, they're building their dream or they've built their dream. And then sometimes the dream can feel like a
nightmare,
a heavy thing that you're pulling up the hill, like a big old boulder, right, that you're trying to push up the hill. But, I do appreciate moments of reflection where I have to remind myself, I'm waking up. I didn't have to ask anybody for time off, last week, which, I was a 9-to-5 employee pretty much my whole life, until I stepped out. I didn't have to say this is what I was going to do. Now I did have to inform people, hey guys, I'm not going to be here. This was going to happen. But so, it's cool to be able to give back to your community. I think that's one of the coolest things too, is I see people come in the counseling office, even though I'm sometimes up in my little hidey hole when I am in the office. And I'll see people that like mentored me growing up, people that I went to school with, sometimes even people that I know, friends that are really feeling supported by the services. So I think that's even more so the dream, to see the impact that our team has been able to create, for a lot of people, so. That's a dream.
So
you know what I mean?
Yeah, it really is. It really is. Well, this has been wonderful. Thanks so much for coming in.
Well, thanks for having me. I really appreciate us getting connected and you inviting me to share a little bit of my story along the journey. And hopefully it inspires somebody else along theirs.
That's right. You are an inspiration.
Yeah.
Hey, thanks so much for joining us this week on Lead, Grow, Live, where we focus on how to lead your team, grow your company, and live your life. I tell you what, I was so inspired having the conversation with Chrsity Pennison this week, and I want you to go into the show notes and listen to her podcast. It's called Inspiring Possible. I think you're going to love it. We podcasters have to get together, and what we're focusing on is helping you lead your people, grow your company, and live your life. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you never miss an episode. We'll see you next week.